Tom is here.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, back on the show, the returning champ, the Buffalo Sabres guy. You want to know what's going up with the goaltender Luongo? We got Tom over here. He can explain.
How are you guys?
What's that?
Thank you for having me again.
No, it's our pleasure. But I sometimes don't you wish we can go back to sports and just talk about nothing for hours? It's just so easy and effortless. It's like, okay, we'll just talk about, let's talk about the goaltending for the Sabres. And you can just go on for hours. And
I really wish I could. It's funny. It is a point that I think I made when I spoke at the Ron Paul Institute back in June while I was doing my kind of big overview of geopolitics. I said this during the talk. I'm like, I really wish I had a real job. And as opposed to this stuff, because to me, this isn't a real job. I don't produce anything. You know what I mean? I don't produce microchips or, snow plows or something. You know what I mean? I used to do this as a chemist. I used to produce, a novel nickel boron coating to make people's guns more efficient and to make saw blades more fit, cut toilet paper rolls more efficient and stuff like that. And that to me was really valuable. And I know, we're doing this stuff now, and it's like, but if you got a talent for it and you got a passion for it, then you got to do it. You know what I mean? And if you've got the skills and you've got the talent, then you have to do it. You're almost obligated to do it. So
yeah,
so
you produce discourse, and that's really important right now. I hear what you're saying. I was in the restaurant industry for quite some time. Even when I cooked in the kitchen with my father, we were making something and something was done, and you can present it. You actually thought you were and right now we're just hanging around having conversations, and you're like, well, what are we actually producing? We're producing discourse, and you produced a lot of it.
I was a builder for 25 years.
Exactly.
Right.
I did remodeled houses and the frame to finish carpentry, full landscape features, shit like that. I do think that if there's a market for what we do, and there's a lane for people who encourage their audiences to do their own thinking, which is a giant lane that is basically unoccupied.
I agree.
Then yeah, we do have an obligation to jump in and be like, no, it's okay. You can actually think for yourselves.
No, guys, you have no idea what it feels like for me at this point after having finally built what I feel is now, a good sized community. And I think that the community continues to grow, and I can, I'm just a messenger at this point. That I sit down with my patrons behind the scenes on our private discussion server, and I woke up this morning to some random thoughts from one of my patrons that literally blew my mind, and didn't have the bandwidth yet this morning to go through all the implications of it. Now I've got 3 months worth of writing to do from this one post from one of my patrons. So yeah. I've got a hive mind now running in that I've inspired and they inspire me. And it's this big thing that goes back and forth. And, I say this all the time. There is no me without my wife, without my community around me. That doesn't exist because, you can't none of this stuff comes out of your head whole cloth. And, it's that constant give and take, that constant discourse that you have with people, and then to give them the opportunity to air their ideas and then bounce them off of your ideas. And then you go back and forth. And that's how we improve as a species. That's the whole thing. I mean, that's literally the free market as a discussion forum. It's the same thing. So
we know what that's like over here. And let me just say this much. It's not so much the information as how you present it. So there is a market for good looking, smart Italian guys like us to, charismatic, to represent that information from smarter people. So don't worry. I think.
I mean, Craig, don't get me wrong. I mean, it's a lament, but it's not a big lament. I mean, I like what I do. I love what I do. I mean, are you kidding me? Yeah. I've worked my entire life to get to the point where I can get paid to be me. I get paid to rant into a microphone. From a certain perspective, it's it's great. It's fantastic. It's what I've kind of always wanted, right? But at the same time, I also realize that it's a product of a time and a structure, and of a terrible imbalance within our society. That we should be doing this around the water cooler. While we're producing, tangible goods and services for people, as opposed to having to devote our lives to trying to decode what the most evil people who have ever existed are going to do to us tomorrow. Right. And you know what I mean? I mean, not that I'm saying that that's not a valuable service. I just wish those people didn't exist so we can go out and, not be so distracted with the nonsense. Could you just leave us alone and let us go produce stuff? Can we just have some nice things? I don't want to eat bugs, dude. Get over yourself. Like, I like cows and I'm not eating freaking bugs.
Yeah, you're a steak and salt guy, remember?
Oh, speaking of, here in about a week, we're gonna have a conversation with Texas Slim, who runs the Texas Beef Initiative. Tom, I don't know if you're familiar with this or not, the Texas Beef Initiative, but it's a fantastic little program that he's got going on over there. And I know that may, upset some.
You know what, Tom, if you'd like to fill in for me that day, being that I'm a vegan, I'll let you do that. And I know an Italian vegan. We exist.
I hate. I'll be polite today. I won't say what I normally say about vegans.
You know what? I'll do that for you, Tom. You can enjoy having Jeff Bezos's meat in your mouth with your breakfast tomorrow morning pasta. You can.
I've looked at the situation. Like I've done the biochemistry. Like no, I'm eating meat. Like that's meat made us human. Meat made us human. Like I can see where
I doubt. I think
we're
98%.
It's very simple. At times, I think a vegan diet is not a bad idea, depending on how far out of whack your body is. But then there comes a point, because I've been there, and there comes a point where I've seen the other side of it, where I just went, meat and salt. And I went from 250 pounds to and unhealthy to 210 and killing it. Like I went from brain fog to clarity. I went from all those things to
this is the point, Tom. It's like you can eat meat and salt, do it clean, right? Get away from all the processed bullshit and the garbage that's given to us, and that's on our TV every day. I mean, we watch sports. I mean, how much food crap would they produce out there? But you can also be a vegan who eats clean, has a lot of fiber, make sure he gets the proteins and the amino acids that he's lacking. It's how you approach it. You know what I'm saying?
I do understand. Craig, I do understand that, but I also understand that that as a chemist, like I know that the body has to work an awful lot harder to process proteins and amino acids from plants, as opposed to just getting them whole cloth directly from cooked meat. Like part of why we are who we are. I really recommend Richard Wrangham's Catching Fire: Why Cooking Made Us Human. I think it's a great book. It really does do a tremendous job of figuring out the not just the biology of it, but the sociology of it, and how this shift, how that shift in us as an evolutionary process. That once we figured out fire and we can get the energy density necessary, because again, it's the same thing. Same thing with vegetables. Like the food's just not bioavailable without having it been cooked and chemically converted. Like it's just not. And even eggs, for example, are only 50%. The protein in eggs is only 50% bioavailable until you cook them. You cook them, now they're 95% available if you're not allergic to egg whites, for example. So it's the same thing. Like I know that people do it well, and I know people are healthy doing it. I think it's a very, very difficult process. Whereas have a steak.
He's how I feel about Steve's going to join with you. And like I said, at the end of the day, I'm glad we can have this debate too as well. But I know this much. I think what you're doing, what I'm doing, is still a bit better than.
Absolutely. Like if
the process, Jack and the crack, all this stuff that people are consuming. Agreed.
Look, agreed. There's no, everybody reacts to everybody reacts to the imbalance within the society in their own way. So it doesn't matter if we're talking food or politics or whatever it happens to be, energy, this, that, environmental cleanup, pollution. We all react to it in some way because we want a better world. Right. Yeah. So obviously, and we want better health. And we want to make our mark on the world that way. And I don't, and then remember, libertarian, dude, you do what you want. Like you be you. I'm all over it. As long as you don't make me be you, then we're all cool. Right. Yeah. So, we all see it that way, and we all react differently to it. And you've taken one route, I've taken another. And we'll see who wins in the marketplace of ideas. That's all that matters. At the end of the day, it's your life. You do what you need to do it. Do you feel you need to? And that's that.
I feel like Tom should come through the studio and you guys should arm wrestle.
Come through when the Islanders Bills play. We'll arm wrestle.
Dude, I do so much in my head anymore. I don't even like. I should work out, but I don't. It's terrible. So
well, you're looking good. You're looking good, and you talked libertarian right there. Okay, so you went to Ron Paul Institute. You spoke. We didn't see you at Freedom Fest. We were looking for Tom Luongo. Where's Tom? He's not there. It's Vegas. No Freedom Fest, but that's it. One of the things you posted up a long time ago, it's kind of pinned at your in your Twitter. It's the importance of being anti-war. And you still have that pin since 2019. Why is it still important today?
It's even more important.
Well, give us a little context of that.
Well, I mean, I wrote that as a eulogy to the great Justin Raimondo of antiwar.com, right? So really that piece is as much a eulogy and as much a challenge to myself to take up the mantle of saying, look, we just lost one of the lions of the anti-war movement. And, someone has to step up and be the person to, someone has to take that to fill those shoes. Like if we don't fill those shoes, then the world has lost something. And whether we can do what Justin did for the 25 years that he did his thing, or 30 years that he did his thing, is one thing. Why it's important today is because it's clear that we're like being pushed by those evil people I talked about earlier towards World War III, and it's a very clear provocation at this point. And the sad part about it is that they pushed the situation to the point where you get libertarians like myself who were sympathetic to the Russians having to invade Ukraine to stop a worse conflict. This is the classic Hobson's choice that these people always push on us. That, oh, well, if you don't like, if you don't like it, well, we can either watch the Russians be destroyed as a civilization, or we can goad them into a conflict in Ukraine. It's crazy. Like, these are the options that are put in front of you, and it's disgusting, frankly. But it is the world, unfortunately, the world we live in, and it constantly making us having to find our way and make these choices as to what to sympathize with. I sympathize with the Russians. I think they're wrong. I think war is still immoral. I think it's never the right answer. Blah 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 blah. But when someone's going to punch you in the mouth,
yeah,
I always learned in Taekwondo, go first. If he's going to punch you, if he's got his fist cocked that's coming at you, go first. Hit him first, because you're probably going to win the fight and survive. Otherwise, you're on the defensive until he beats the crap out of you. And
strike first, strike hard, no mercy, sir. Steve,
what the fuck?
So
that was Cobra Kai's.
Well, the way I always looked at it is it's John Sheridan from Babylon 5. Never started a fight, but always finished them.
Gotcha.
But always finished them. Right? Simple.
Got it.
I don't know. I mean, I was taught that fights suck, and they take a lot of energy out of you, especially if you let them go on for a long time. So the best possible thing that you can do is try to overwhelm and annihilate your opponent so that you can get back onto your day. Because you've got a lot more and better things to do than to stand around getting all sweaty, swinging on somebody or getting the hell beat out of you.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, I used to pay somebody to do it. I got 10 years worth of, on and off. I got 20 years on and off at Taekwondo, probably about 10 years in the dojo, over 25 years. Strapping on the gloves and the ankle pads, and not wearing a cup and not wearing a mouthpiece either, and just going in there getting rocked on a regular basis, and learning how to do it and do it well. Because you need to know you need to know what it feels like and how to deal with it, and then two, how to avoid it, and then that's what you mostly learn is how to avoid it and how to counterattack, and
At Freedom Fest, Tom, we interviewed Scott Horton, and Scott Horton, antiwar.com,
absolutely,
kind of suggested that Putin made a mistake. The Russian Federation made a mistake by going into this conflict. How do you feel, and what do you think some of the options that Putin and the Russian Federation could have, leaned on? Because me personally, I thought that, this is 8 years of bombing in the Donbass. This is a puppet government. We have bazooka smoking evidence that Victoria Nuland and the State Department picked who they wanted. Poroshenko's freaking inauguration, Joe Biden was there, for crying out loud.
Yep.
We armed Nazis to the T. They went immediately to the eastern part of the country where they didn't recognize the new government, which they thought was not democratic, and started bombing them and terrorizing them. Putin's own people, with a lot of citizens within Russian, were like, why aren't you intervening? What's going on? He tried to work the Minsk Accords. They failed. I mean, if anything, and once again, I'm not a pro-war guy. I consider myself an anti-imperialist, but I think he waited too long, to do this. So I just want your thoughts on, could have he done something else? What would that have been? And do you think he was justified for doing what he did?
No, I don't think he had any other options. Yes, I think he exhausted every option. And this is where, unfortunately, where I think some of the doctrinaire libertarians just have a blind spot in terms of geopolitics. And I appreciate Scott Horton, and I think he's done yeoman's work over the years. He, along with Raimondo, and neither of them would ever sanction what Putin's done. I don't live quite in that world because, while I think war is always wrong, and I think war is the health of the state and yada yada yada. I'm not gonna all those libertarian bromides are all correct. I don't disagree with any of them now. The problem is, like everything else, it's the actual world we live in, and where the stakes here are so freaking high because of what you can see happening at this moment in time, this period. What I keep coming back to is, I see this as the last ditch effort of European colonial powers to reassert their dominance over the world. They want it back. They want the colonies in the United States back, and they want China and Russia subjugated, and they want techno-commie. Call it what you want, techno-commie fascism. I don't care. Just call it what you want. But it's terrible. I like to call it Minority Report with more Germans. Okay. To get it out of the way. Like, that's what we're dealing with. I don't want to live under that world. And I'm willing to fight to say no, because they're aggressing me on a daily basis. Every day, my life is aggressed by these people. Like, I can come up with 100 billion ways in which they do so on a daily basis. We never get anything else done. So Putin has those same justifications. And the Minsk Accords were designed from the ground up to delay the process. Putin thought he could work a political angle because his blind spot was always that the Europeans weren't the bad guys, because he has a soft spot for Germans. And Angela Merkel used that again, like the good Stasi agent that she was and is, used that against him for years during this conflict. Until she finally, now that she's no longer in office, finally came out about 2 months ago and said, yeah, the Minsk Accords were designed to just delay things until we were armed enough in Ukraine to, attack the Russians. Yeah. And so, she said it. Like, she finally just called a spade a spade. She's no longer in power, so now she can speak the truth.
Yeah, yeah.
So, when Putin had all these justifications. He had a justification at a minimum, morally, legally, to go into the Donbass to stop the shelling. That he went in, and my partner Dexter White makes the same argument, that he went in with a shock and awe campaign to attack all around the country all at once, including Kiev, including into the south. You got to get all of that. That is actually harder to defend from an international law perspective. The Russians are very good at parsing it as international law to their advantage, just like everybody else is. So, say what you want. I look at it at this point as a very realpolitik kind of guy going, yeah, but if they didn't do that, then it won't matter. Like, what does international law mean when nobody else practices it? Why should you hang on to it?
Yeah.
So I've been very practical about this. I'm like, yeah, if the Russians don't do this, and I'll be honest with you, Craig, if the Russians don't take Odessa in some way, either through inspiring an uprising or somehow, re-engaging the ability to do maneuver warfare, they're still in real trouble come circa 2024, 2025. Okay. So I think that Russia has to take from Odessa all the way to Kharkov up to the Dnieper River in order to open up Eastern Europe to the possibility of being able to leave the European Union and still act as independent economic actors, because they'll have access to the Danube River system and the treaty and all of that, and then all the markets east without having to go through, if they all secede from the EU, without having to go through EU lands.
Yeah.
And that's a very important aspect of this and a very strategic aspect of this. And
but then what's left of the west of Ukraine, right? That's something that Scott Gordon alluded to. Well, you can't just leave it be now, right? We're not going to let Zelensky stay there. I don't think now if we've pushed our territory up to that point.
Who's the hour in this?
I'm talking about Russia.
Oh. Yeah, from the Russian perspective, you
push that
Zelensky's government is going to Zelensky's government is already collapsing.
Yeah,
the Russians have taken the territory that produces 80% of Ukrainian GDP. Yeah. So let's remind. So
how does that change? Do you think they'd fund a faction that's going to overturn the Zelensky government eventually?
No, I just think it collapses because we're going to get tired of paying for it. The Zelensky government doesn't exist without our money. And the best way to stop the support of the Western of that government and of this entire process is to drain the world of dollars.
But then the anti-Russian sentiment doesn't go away; it's still there for those people. Yeah. The ideology is there, whatnot. I mean, it can uprise again and give once again problems on that border again. I don't think you can just let it be and sort itself out.
I agree, but I think by the time here's the thing: the bigger question is, will the United States and it's very clear. Let's start. It's very clear that Europe no longer has any more appetite for this, because while the Western press, especially the British press, keeps saying, "Well, Putin made a mistake and we forced him. He expected to win in 3 days by taking Kiev and we didn't. So now he's that's all nonsense.
It is nonsense.
Never intended to take Kiev in 3 days.
No, he just wanted the troops to stay there, and that's what they did. About 50,000 troops had to stay in Kiev. Maybe give or take so they couldn't go and fight on the Eastern Front.
You could make a lot of we can have a strategic tactical discussion about this, but let's just say it was never Putin's primary objective to take Kiev in 3 days. That's a lie. Now, it's not a lie to say that the West is projecting what they wanted to do to the Russians via the economic sanctions and everything else, which was to try and destroy the Russian government through a popular uprising by cutting them off from the world monetary system.
How's that working?
That done in the first 2 weeks.
Well, I mean, we know that because
that's working out.
We know that because they came out.
Right. No, what I'm saying is what we always it's Zelensky 101, guys. Always accuse your opponent of that which you're trying to do.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's the point I'm trying to make here with this. So now you're seeing the European Union go, well, we can't. Well, that failed. Now what? Well, we're all going to starve and we're all going to hang from lampposts because we can't feed our people and we can't heat our homes. And, the Rhine, all this stuff is happening, right? So now you're starting to see that break. Now you're starting to see Europe break from the U.S. or basically from AUKUS, the Five Eyes AUKUS angle. And so NATO is now in is in trouble. The EU wants hegemony, but doesn't have the ability to make it work. They still got Biden mostly doing and Pelosi and whatnot, mostly doing their bidding. Now they're trying to gin up a war in China, which I've been saying for over a year. That was always the goal here, which was to get the United States involved in a war on 2 fronts with 2 nuclear powers that we can't beat individually without going nuclear. No way can we beat them. So they beat both of them. Therefore, the whole purpose of this is to foment a political crisis here at home and an economic crisis here at home. But with Europe trying to pull back now and say, "Oh, let's lessen the sanctions, let's buy some Russian oil," while still virtue signaling that they're not, but they're doing it. So it's very clear that we're going to be in a post-Ukraine environment, I think, very soon now, and they're now pivoting off to something else. I honestly, if you want my honest opinion, what I call Davos, the European colonialist powers that are left, what they're shifting now is, as opposed to the full-blown push to take out the Russians through Ukraine, they're now going, well, that didn't work. It's the midterms. What can we do to destroy the United States? We still have Biden and the Democrats in power. So how much more can we destroy the United States? How much more can we destroy the institutions, the economic system, yada yada yada, and the political system, all of it.
Yeah.
So that people like us who are supposedly on opposite sides of the spectrum shouldn't be talking to each other.
Are you saying the European Union is saying this? How can we destroy?
Oh, absolutely. The Davos, what I call Davos, or the World Economic Forum, let's just call a spade here. What I call Davos clearly wants the United States destroyed. George Soros has said explicitly that his goal in this life is to destroy the United States. It needs to be destroyed. Obama talks in terms of the United States needs to, for all intents and purposes, needs to be destroyed. You can see it in their actions. You can see it in their rhetoric. You can see it in their policy. You can see it in every aspect of every day. You can see it in foreign policy. You can see it in every way. If you're putting pieces on a go board, or you're moving pieces on a chessboard, you can see the strategy. And the strategy is very simple.
But
the way to capture the king is to discredit them.
But the Europeans are the ones who are getting hurt most economically, right? They're the
That's
ones
why they're pulling back off of Ukraine now and trying to push. Okay. They thought they were going to win. They thought they were going to get what they wanted. They thought they had more economic power over the Russians than they did. That has failed. Now they're pivoting off of that, and now the focus of almost all the policy at this point has been to ratchet up the insanity going into the midterm elections here in the U.S.
Where was the idea coming from that the Europeans were in the dominant position economically, where the Russians are concerned, when the Russians are the people who are supplying a disproportionate amount of their fuel, a disproportionate amount of their grain, like everything that Russia produces has a direct pipeline to Europe. It doesn't have to be shipped overseas. It doesn't have to be brought in from a number of it's like a straight shot. And in many cases, especially the pipelines with the oil, it was a literal straight shot, a literal pipeline. The economists who worked up that sanctioning Russia was going to be a good idea, this is my opinion. We're not doing so and just made a math error, but that you couldn't look at how much Russia produces for the European economy at large, the UK's economy, and go sanctioning these people who already know that they're coming. When Putin and Lavrov came out in November of last year and gave that speech and said, we know that we're going to be hit with this. We've already got our plans in place. We don't give a damn about you right now. We're in a superior position. For them to come out and say that, admit it out front, and for Western Europe to still go, no, this is a good idea, in my opinion, represents a signing off on the controlled demolition of the Western economy by the people who manipulate the levers of power within the West.
Okay, I partially agree with you. Okay, I think you'll be shocked to hear that I partially agree with you. I think they do want that destruction. Okay, I've always believed that, but what they've always wanted was, they want the destruction without the political cost. So they still want to be able to maintain the political control. They're not going to maintain that political control. Well, they're trying to work it out now. But at the same time, they really did believe that they would hurt the Russians far worse than they did, because I've been saying this for a long time, guys. We all know what a monopoly is, because we've all been inculcated in frankly, in Marxist tinged economic theory, and we all are worried about monopolies. Oh, he's the one supplier, therefore we're worried about him. No, really, the thing that there's a thing called monopsony, which is I'm your only customer, and if I'm your only customer, then I have as much power over you than if you're my only supplier. And the Europeans really did believe that they had monopsony power over the Russians, that if they were to take their demand off the market, that they would then be able to destroy the Russians while also draining the United States. Because what did Biden do? He drained the strategic petroleum reserve, and most of that went to Europe. We diverted all of our LNG from global markets to Europe.
But a significant portion went to China too.
Some of it did go to China, no argument. And I think that the GOP is going to impeach Joe Biden for that. They're going to attempt to impeach Joe Biden for that in 2023. I think that's the basis for their impeachment and or conviction of him. Yeah, if he survives that long, that's one of the things that's on the flow chart, right? Yeah, I mean, it's a big dartboard with it's a big Gantt chart at this point.
I want to see Tom Luongo's blackboard or corkboard with
What they gotta
all of
peach
the-
him for?
with all of the strings,
Pepe
and
Lopez
all of that
strings?
shit.
Yeah.
I
wanted-
don't have one of those guys, but I don't have one. It's all in here.
Yeah.
Frankly, it's all in my head.
Well, go ahead.
I guess I can't map it out. That mind map is insane. So I just think that it's the problem here is, like everything else, that you have people who have plans, and then you have people who are midwits who are not particularly good at improvising. And what I've been seeing from them is a mixture of bad improvisation mixed with sticking to the plan. And so it looks like they always had their goal, right? We're going to do X, Y, and Z. We're going to have our great reset. We're going to destroy. We have to destroy the European economy in order to be able to default on the debt, arrogate all the power within the ECB and the European Commission, take away all the national government's rights, and nationalize their gold, kill the central banks, kill the commercial banking system, and all the rest of it, and then reissue everything as a digital euro with a central bank digital currency. I think the Fed's helping them along with that. The problem is when they do all that, no one's ever going to want to do business with them again. Is the problem with that plan? Either you get everybody to go along with that plan, or you're the guy who took the leap off the cliff and waiting for everybody else to join you. And no, you're just going to hit the ground. And that's what's going to happen, because once the Europeans default on their debt, which Soros has laid out how they're going to do it, they're going to issue, perpetual bonds, and they're just going to pay you 0.25% or 1% on a perpetual bond for your money, and roll it all up to the ECB and issue digital scrip on top of it, right? They're going to default on that. No one's going to do business with them after this. Seriously, think about what they've done. The world was shocked by the U.S. and Europe seizing Russia's foreign exchange reserves. Just like it was unprecedented in American politics on Monday that a former president was raided by the FBI. That never done before. And it was always a hallmark of our political system that, regardless of how divided everything is, the peaceful transference of power from one administration to the next is the hallmark of our political system. Right? That ended. I mean, you could argue that it ended on January 6th, and you wouldn't be wrong. And it certainly ended on August 8th, right? Raiding Trump for whatever reason they had. So, like Trump, hate Trump does not matter. If they had done this to Obama, I would be saying the exact same thing. And I despise
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Right? I think Trump orchestrated this whole thing.
It's very possible that, it's very possible.
I didn't 2 days ago. I didn't 3 days ago. The longer I sit with it, the more I'm starting to think that this is a Trump orchestrated event. But let's discuss it as if it were not, because it's
let's just keep it as simple as possible, because I just don't think that Trump's that sophisticated.
Well, I don't think it was Trump. I think it was
fair enough.
Bigger powers to doing this. It's more divisive than anything else. Everybody's going to one side to the other. Should we get rid of the FBI? I don't know. What do you think?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I've been saying that since the 1970s when I was 8, so it doesn't really matter.
But what are the conservatives saying now, right? We need to get rid of everybody who's there. We need to fire everybody. They don't want to get rid of the institution. They just want better management. Vote Republican and everything will be okay. We'll get the right people for the FBI this time.
That's all nonsense. So you can't get the right people. The organizations themselves are corrupt.
Exactly.
Right? The system that created them is corrupt, and the system itself. This is just chapter 10 of The Road to Serfdom by Hayek, Why the Worst Get on Top. It's just a mechanistic argument about when you create systems that encourage people's immoral behavior, eventually they get completely stabbed by immoral people. And over the course of generations, you just destroy the productive capacity of a society. And it doesn't matter if you're talking about a corporation or government or whatever. The process of bureaucratization and that process of corruption that's what doesn't change. That's the common denominator, regardless of what the organization is. As a libertarian, I like to quote the late great Butler Schaefer, and says, "I distrust every organization greater than a two-handed game of poker." Like, that's my operating principle. Okay. And in every way. And I always remember that any organization's first job its primary mover, its primary mission, regardless of what its mission statement is survival. And then everything else comes second. Serving your customers, serving the people, whatever it is, government, corporation, it doesn't matter. The small
FBI isn't
business
here to
doesn't
keep us
matter.
safe.
It's survival first and everything else is second.
Yeah.
And and that's the way we're wired as people. And that's why you never want to allow for large systems like the FBI, like the US government, like the Russian government, like Davos or any of these other organizations like IBM or Apple, or you never want them to get this big. Bigness is the problem. Bigness is the fundamental problem. And when you see bigness happen, it's because, like we've seen, it's because there are other roadblocks and barriers put up against competition to allow to keep bigness from happening. And that's what laws do. That's what regulations are for. It's to always to freeze one guy out so that and pick winners and losers, and freeze one guy out and advance the other guy.
Exactly. I agree. It's a quagmire for you as a libertarian. And what do? You know what I'm saying? Like, because your theory is that if you let if you just move away all the restrictions and all the red tape, that it will kind of work itself out. But what if one entity is growing despite, it's in a free market? What do you do then? Then you have an issue. Well,
the way I've always described it to people is like, look, we as libertarians do a terrible job of messaging all this. Like I've always said, you should take the libertarian Hippocratic Oath, which is you try to do as little harm as possible while you're unwinding all this. I used to describe it years ago, like to my friends, and I'm like, guys, it's like a big plate of spaghetti, and you got to unwind, you got to pull it apart very, very carefully, but your goal is to clean the plate. But you got to do it one strand at a time without breaking as few strands as possible. Mm-hmm. Okay, and as you do that, it will become easier and easier and easier as you remove, spaghetti from the plate in order to be able to achieve that. Okay, it's an order of operations thing. I talk about this all the time. Like, I'm no fan of the Federal Reserve, but from my perspective, and I've been like screamed at by people calling me a rampant statist now, which is hilarious because they walking in the middle of the conversation when I'm like, no, I'm like on Team Fed right now. Raise interest rates, break the ECB, kill the Eurodollar futures market. You want to end these. You want to end the war on food, the war on people, the war on everything? Well, got news for you. It's all coming out of Europe. It's not going to help the Chinese at all either. Oh, by the way, like you think their system can handle the U.S. going to 6% on the Fed funds rate? Got news for you. No. So if you want to finally break these people who have been running, who think they have the right to run the world and believe they do actually run the world, well, then the best way to do that is to take away their dollar printing press and creating offshore dollar markets that are bigger and a shadow banking system that's orders of magnitude bigger than what the Fed can actually produce on its own. And that's the problem. So the way you beat these people is you take away their cookie. You take away their wealth generation. You take away their gearing. Right now, Eurodollar futures, Eurodollar gearing is negative. And it's all centered around the European and Hong Kong banks, and they're the ones in serious trouble.
When I try to talk to people about, well, how can we stop these, oligarch, blah, 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 you engage in economic warfare. Mm-hmm. You don't try and go, you can show up in the streets. It helps people with an idea that there's people on your side and you're not alone in this. That's one thing. But if you're not attacking them at the central banks, you're not doing a goddamn thing. No, you're not. And so if we don't agree that a counter economy is step one towards getting out of this system, then we're all basically butting heads.
I agree.
Over everything else.
Agreed. I mean, that's why I was an immediate adopter of Bitcoin the first time. When I first read the white paper back in 2010, I'm like, oh my God, this is brilliant, and it can change the world. And then, I didn't believe in it, and didn't hold on to the coins that I mined back then, or you and I wouldn't be talking because I would own a private island somewhere.
I was going to say,
no, seriously, still dead serious, like.
I know.
So, but it is what it is. And, but like everything else, I can tell you what to do. I'm pretty good at telling other people what to do with their money, but I'm not particularly good at managing my own. What a shock. Like, so when you're as, high strung and as and as impulsive as I am, it is the way it is. So the it's very clear that there's an order of operations and what major power centers have to be taken down and in what order. Okay. And those people are not going to go lightly into that good night or gently into that good night. They're not going to go lightly to oblivion. They've had a tremendous amount of power, ebbs and flows over the course of the last, few centuries. And they're not going to give it up easily. And you're seeing that today. You're seeing that in these, if we take the Trump thing at face value, well, then it's really obvious that this is a desperation ploy to stop him from running again, because they're desperately afraid of losing what control they have over the United States. Because now, let's imagine, I'm not a big Trump fan, but say this: Trump now understands what the problem is. He actually now has he should actually have around him now people who know actually what to do to depower the bureaucracy and the deep state around him. He should have that information by now. He walked in 2016, he didn't have any of that. He had a very vague view of how the government works. He should now understand how the government works. So that's why they're desperately afraid to see him walk back in 2024, because it won't be the same Trump. It'll be vindictive, mean, horrible, nasty Trump who knows exactly what to do and what words to say and what executive orders to write and what things to do in order to, start putting all these people in jail and start moving this stuff out and moving this ball forward. That's what they're afraid of. And you can see that they're afraid of that because of the way they're trying to stop him from running for office. That's prima facie evidence of.
I think that's what they want. I think
they know what's going on with him.
I think that's what they want you to see. That's what they want you to believe. But I don't know what would lead you to think that Donald Trump is going to do anything different this time when it comes to every single important decision that was made the first time out. He threw it away. I mean, including saying Bitcoin was crap, which means he's buying into the monetary system. He was terrible when it came to foreign policy. Same type of foreign policy in Latin America. He didn't free Julian Assange. He's not a beacon for free speech and free press.
I'm not a Trump fan. I'm telling you, but I also believe
CARES Act.
Yeah,
I don't know, Tom.
I think he's mostly running an interference campaign for Ron DeSantis. That's what I think he's doing.
Yes, I've said the whole time, DeSantis Gabbard. It's
I've been saying DeSantis Gabbard for almost a year now.
2024 is Make America One Party for real. You're going to see DeSantis Gabbard on the Republican side. You're going to see whatever they replace Dementia Joe with, and either
it'll be Gavin Newsom and somebody else.
Yeah, Liz Cheney, Adam Kinzinger, somebody for the Republicans from the Republican Party, and both parties are going to run. It's about unity. It's about healing the country. Look, I have someone who used to be on the other side of the aisle, and it's the whole thing.
And the biggest tell is that Tulsi Gabbard is going to sit in tonight for Tucker Carlson while he's on vacation.
5 o'clock Vegas time. Everybody get your popcorn, man.
But at the same time, I really do believe that there are people within the American power structure who understand what's going on and are like, they're not down with this. That I can see it.
If Trump was
good things that happen, guys, you have to realize Mario Draghi being out of power and going to snap elections in Italy is one of the most consequential things that we've ever seen.
Yeah.
And I got news for you.
You're not wrong.
That doesn't happen if somebody wasn't standing behind Conti and M5S and Lega and making them walk out the door. Yeah. And there's only one group on this planet who I think has enough power to stand up to Davos and the club and the Roman mafia that exists in Italian politics, and that's the U.S. banking system. That's the Federal Reserve. Like the only people with enough power and sovereigntists within, I hate to call them, I guess, sovereigntists within the DOD. Because remember, as a friend of mine in Italy says to me all the time, there are more American military bases in Italy than in any other European country.
Yeah.
So that is true.
So it's easy to be cynical. Cynicism in this day and age is the easiest position to take. Yeah, it's all crap. It's all one big hard, shit sandwich. We're all gonna have to take a bite. They all work for each other. They're all in bed with each other. They all peg each other at the end of the night and then go and have beers together. Like it's easy. And then there's the run the script as to whose ox is being gored by what the current plan is. And when you start to really do that map, you find out that there are some very powerful people who are not happy with this. I personally think that BlackRock is going to be bankrupt within 3 years.
What was I telling you? Was it earlier this week, last week?
Yeah,
they've made BlackRock and Larry Fink the target.
Yeah,
He's going to be the
he's
next
the Democratic
public big fall
donor.
guy.
Yeah.
JP Morgan is coming for all of them, guys.
Yeah.
That's serious. And Morgan is not, and Morgan didn't send anybody of note to Davos this year. Jamie Dimon didn't go to Davos this year. Brian Moynihan of BOFA did.
Mm-hmm.
Citigroup wasn't there. Goldman wasn't there. Morgan wasn't there. Bank of New York Mellon, they were there. I mean, they were like lower level VPs and whatnot, putzing around, trolling for work. Sure. But we're talking about, you didn't see Jamie Dimon give a speech at Davos this year.
No, they were both. There were representatives from J.P. Morgan and Goldman at Bilderberg in D.C. this year.
Yeah, but that's not the same group.
I understand.
Yeah, it's not the same group.
I do. I'm just there's still
there's similarities. They're very
there's a lot of crossover and whatnot. But when Kissinger, who created the WEF, who bankrolled Klaus Schwab and created the WEF, goes into Davos and says, guys, you need to sue for peace in Ukraine or we're going to lose everything. And then Soros comes out the next day and goes, no, holy war against the Russians and the Chinese. And they went holy war on the Russians and the Chinese for the next 2 months.
Yep.
And they empowered Mike. Then they brought Mike. Then they dusted off Mike Pompeo to give that 3 lighthouses abortion of a speech that let us know what the policy was going to be. And then they sent Pelosi. Who do you think sent Pelosi to Taiwan?
Well, they sent Paul Pelosi Jr. to Taiwan.
They
didn't send Nancy Pelosi. They sent Paul Pelosi Jr. to Taiwan.
He's got to tie up some business ends over there. Some of those labs.
There's that too. But I mean, they sent Pelosi there in order to try and get the Chinese to do something dumb so that they could, again, have the excuse, just like they had with the Russians. They were always planning on cutting the Russians out of SWIFT and sanctioning their banks and doing away with our ability to invest in their markets and all of that stuff. They just needed an excuse. So Putin said, all right, fine, I'll give you the excuse, but it's going to be on my terms. So I'm taking out all of Ukraine's ability to, fight back. And you're not going to like what it looks like afterwards. And I think the Chinese were very smart. I didn't expect the Chinese to do much. They did what they did. And I think that what they did was far more than anybody in the West really thought they were going to do. And I also think that the Chinese at some point
the military actions
are going to move on Taiwan. I think it's inevitable.
Waters.
Are you talking about the military actions, Tom, or the way they're doing serious actions right out in front of the water, right there?
Yeah, and then there's going to be
an invasion.
Yeah, I think you don't make those kinds of simulations like you did. It's the same script that we were running in November towards February with the Russians. It's the same process here with the Chinese. We're acting exactly the same way, and it's not in the U.S.'s best interest. And if you ask why why we have a State Department that's engaged in anti-diplomacy, you have to say they're not. It's not because they're stupid. It's because they're vandals, and that's what they want, and they're getting what they want. And now you got to ask yourself, why do they? If that's the case, then why? And then who do they work for that they would do that? And blah, blah, blah. And then once you start going down once you start filling in those answers, being honest with yourself about what you think those answers could or could not be, I've got my thesis. I'm happy to hear what other people have to say about it. But you know what my thesis is, which is that this is being run by, the people who've come out from behind the curtain and said, yeah, it's us. And we think we're, unassailable and have so much power that we can just, run roughshod over all you. And Hillary was out there with her emails merch the other day.
It
was crazy.
$30 for a hat.
We had a little bit of fun with that on the show here.
Not enough.
Tom, but I mean, it's gross. Like the hubris involved again, because the original complaint on the warrant was that Trump mishandled classified information. And for Hillary Clinton to have the unmitigated hubris to be like, yeah, now's a good time to ramp this back up. Here's a good time to remind people that I was under investigation for illegally storing classified information on my own personal private servers. Yeah.
And remember that the president, by definition, if I understand this correctly, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I was reading some stuff about this, like, what the president decides to declassify something, and he can like, by him having the documents, he has the power to declassify everything. The former Secretary of State does not have that power.
Yeah.
Under any, regardless of whether the president actually has that power or not, and maybe that's arguable. Then maybe there's limits to what that power is. He certainly has more of that power than the former Secretary of State does. Period.
Yeah.
Under any circumstance, and so there's no equivocation here. There's no equivalency here. Okay, this is just Hillary doing the proof of life tour, and I firmly believe that she's saying these things. She's doing this because she really does believe that she is going to be able to be the candidate in 2024.
Mm-hmm.
And that's who they trust. And that's the only one left on the Democratic side of the field that they trust.
Make it so, blonde-haired, blue-eyed baby Jesus. Make it so. This is a comedy show. Yes. It is a comedy show.
If you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong.
Well, let me just say this much. I heard that now that we have the But Her Emails hat out there, that Kamala Harris is thinking about cranking up the machine and get those shirts out that say, "I was that little girl." She did that after the debate on the bus. Had to be bussed. I was that little girl.
Merch was already made.
The merch was already made.
Now, I think I've just noted the immense amount of lack of Harris. Like, she's not anywhere to be found, and that's telling me that she is laying plans for when they get rid of Biden. And I also think that she is not going to be I don't think she wants to be Spiro Agnew, and so she's staying as far away from all of this as possible. And if they're gonna Spiro Agnew her out and move in like Mama Yellen, which has been my argument for over a year now. But the way Harris has been acting, she's showing a lot more savvy than I would have given her credit for. And here's one I want you guys to think about. And then I guess because it should just about be time, right?
Yep.
I don't think that she works for anybody. I think she's on Team Harris. And I think that if Harris makes it into the White House, that the purge of the Obamaites could be unbelievable. And we could see a real storm in 2023 if they move Biden out. It's maybe the reason why they haven't moved him out yet, because they haven't been able to figure out a way to get rid of Harris first.
Mm-hmm. Before you get out of here, Tom,
sure.
And before you plug where everybody can find you and your work, I need to know what year the Gretsch is. If that is another Gretsch next to it, what year that is?
No. That's a Rickenbacker.
Oh, it's an
85. That's an 85 Rickenbacker 4003. What's 85, next to it? Okay. Yeah. And what's next to it is just a 2021 Ibanez.
Okay.
$300.
Yeah, I could only see a little bit, but okay.
Yeah.
That is
I like to see that stuff, though. Yeah. I really do, because it's like.
And what's next? And the other one is just a Harley Benton Yamaha knockoff, which I really like that bass. That one's really fun. But so 3 different scales: 32 the Mezzo, 33 1/4 the Rickenbacker, 34 the Harley Benton.
Heck yeah!
I can barely.
Hopefully, he has a road guitar, so next time he comes here, you and him can jam while I'm cooking dinner.
I got 3. I got 2 Tellys and a Strat sitting right.
You got Rhodes. All right.
Yeah, no, I've got guitars hanging all over my thing. But the big one is that the drum set's downstairs.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, Tom, before you plug your stuff, make sure you tell everybody, hi, my name is Tom Luongo. My pronouns are he, him. I'm wearing a blue shirt and glasses, since we're talking about.
Actually, I don't remember what the swearing policy is on this.
Oh, you go right ahead.
Okay, so my name is Tom Luongo, and my pronouns are "fuck you," and I wear shirts so as to not scare the natives by letting everybody see the hair on my back. You can find me at my blog at tomluongo.me. You can follow me on Twitter at TFL1728. And of course, you can sign up for the Patreon to get the Gold Goats and Guns newsletter and bi-weekly market reports and private blog posts.
Oh, good. You got rid of your Bitcoin, but take the Mets and you can make it all up. Tom Luongo. Thank you so much, brother, for joining us.
Fair enough, guys. You guys be well. Thank you for having me back on. Appreciate it,
Tom. Tom Luongo, ladies and gentlemen. That was a fun day.